All right. All right, welcome everybody to another edition of the LOG Dynasty Cast. I'm here joined by my recurring guest, co-host, whatever we want to call it, Matt. Thanks for joining. It's been a minute. So how are you doing? How's your off season treating you?
I think we're in a bit of a slow period. Well, I don't know. I feel like we get a couple days of high activity and then a lot of slow activity. I'm really excited for the draft, though. I can't wait.
Yeah. The draft is coming up. Was it the 27th this month? Is that the
Um,
day?
It's 27th to 28th, whatever that Thursday is. I think
I'm
is
gonna
the
take
one.
Friday off, and I'm going to definitely stay up, watch it. Hopefully, we can get other people watching it too.
Yeah,
So everybody, mark your calendars. We'll try to get on Discord and just hang out or Zoom or whatever. It doesn't matter.
yeah. Friday too. I think Friday might have more
Yeah, actually,
interesting fantasy people.
that's actually a really good point. Like this year, the first round might only have a few guys that we're excited
Yeah,
about, given
people
how the
that will
draft
get
actually looks.
drafted. I think all four quarterbacks in the first round will get drafted at some point in our draft. They will
Absolutely.
for sure. There's probably 3 to 5 wide receivers that go in the first round,
Mhm.
and one or 0 to 2 running backs that go in the first round. So we'll have
Yeah.
there'll be people.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be at least one running back that goes in the first round, if not like top 10. I think people are going to zig. I think the Eagles or somebody like that they're going to just draft him early.
Not that let's not do the Eagles though. Let's
do
stay away from the Eagles.
you have a preferred spot? What's your like top 3, I guess?
Okay, top three. Atlanta, the Chargers, and Dallas, I think would be the top three.
Yeah, Dallas would be devastating for Pollard. That would be I guess I'm skipping over the fact that Chargers would be devastating for Eckler. But it's devastating for anybody. Just keep that in mind, folks. Some running back room is about to get totally destroyed by Bijan.
Yeah.
Just the way it goes. I don't think there's anybody else in the class that does that. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, if he goes somewhere, he might be the second guy, but he'd be like a really supercharged second guy.
Mm-hmm.
He might take over. I don't know. It just depends on where he goes. But anyway, cool. I like those spots. I think those would be some good spots. I would think the Lions would be a good spot if they like traded one of their guys. But they just signed Montgomery, so I kind of doubt it. Can't really think of other places that I would be like super thrilled.
If the Chiefs draft someone, everyone's going to get really excited.
Yeah.
If the Chiefs draft any offensive player,
yeah,
in the first
exactly.
2 rounds, they're
Yeah.
gonna go crazy.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I'm curious if they draft a receiver this year. I think they definitely could. Because I mean, you don't want to go into the season with Mr. Glass, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore, who hasn't proven too much yet as your 1-2 punch. I guess do they still have MVS there? Is he still a thing?
I think he's a free agent still. I don't think
Okay.
he signed anywhere.
But Juju's gone to the Patriots, which is something. And Jacoby Myers is out of town. So he's the guy now, I guess. All right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about with kind of the free agency moves and things like that. But I think today we'll just focus on kind of our league moves, and then I want to do a quick recap of some trades. We can take as much time as we want, but on each of these trades. But there's been a lot of trades since the last time we talked, which is awesome. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trades since February. Early
Have we had a podcast since the championship review with
February.
David and?
I think I've had a couple, or I at least had one where I talked about Waldrop's team.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was it. And that one, I don't even think I went over trades in that one. So I maybe could have even gone back further on the trades. Let me see if there's anything. Yeah, there was some stuff before what I'm about to go over. I don't know why I drew the line where I did. Maybe we just pick some of the more interesting ones and talk about them. And I guess I'll kind of go backwards. Let's see. We got January. I mean, I guess we could do that.
So we definitely need to have February 2nd in there. Let's see.
Yeah, February 2nd for sure.
I
Um,
think, do we need to go back to, do we, have we, I don't think we've talked about the January 17th trade.
uh, no, we haven't talked about that one either, which would be a good one as well. Let's see. I mean, we could go all the way back to the 11th. Honestly, we could just do all the trades.
I do keep scrolling and I keep wanting to,
Yeah, so
we
I,
have,
I I think we start there. So Bryce sent out Joe Mixon or Bryce sent out DeAndre Hopkins and Rashad White for Joe Mixon and a 2024 second. That's a David second who just won the championship. So
yeah.
do with that what you will. Things can change fast. But what do you think about that trade? What's your initial reaction?
I didn't like it for Bryce then, and I like it less now, pretty
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
I think there's still room for this to go even worse for Bryce. Like depending on what happens, do the Bengals cut Mixon? Do they or do they draft a running back? Those kind of questions. And obviously he's had some offseason craziness, but I guess he's had issues before with guns or not guns maybe. I don't know what he did before, but he's gotten in trouble before. But yeah, I think this. And I guess there's still a lot to figure out with this trade because DeAndre Hopkins, we keep talking about him getting traded too. I mean, he could land
Yeah.
anywhere.
It came out today that he might just get cut because no one wants to pick up his contract.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But he would be good in so many places. I mean, what if he ended on the Chiefs? Like, what? That would be crazy. I mean, his value would just explode.
I don't see the Chiefs trading for him though, because if they wanted to pay a lot of money for wide receiver, they would have just kept Tyreek Hill,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So,
But if he gets cut, then
yeah. And then
yeah.
Rashad White is somehow staying afloat. I really thought free agency would have hit him a little harder than it did. It doesn't seem like did they even sign anybody? Did Tampa Bay sign a running back?
I don't think so.
So either they've got their sights on like another running back, or they're just happy with Rashad White as the guy, um, which is interesting. I mean, he could be, and maybe they just think they need a lot of other things than just running back, but that could
But I
work
think
out really well.
there's so many running backs still on the market,
Mm,
so maybe they're just waiting until, like, if they just wait for training camp, they can just sign Zeke for nothing or get Leonard Fournette back for nothing. Or
right? Yeah, I forgot Fournette's, and then Cook. Who knows what happens with Dalvin Cook? Seems like there's a lot of smoke there. They could go somewhere. I don't know. I mean, Mixon had that one good game last year, right? I mean, he had that
5 touchdowns. Yeah.
one bananas game, and then the rest of the season was kind of mediocre. I mean, I don't know if the offensive line is the greatest, but so you could blame it on that. Maybe he was a little hurt. Um, but it's been a while since we've seen elite Joe Mixon. He definitely has always been one of those dudes. It's like he could put it together and be like
Mm-hmm.
a top 5 running back easily. So I get that, but I mean, he's getting older now. So what is he? He's 26. So I mean, but he has a lot of tread on the tires. So we'll see. But the 24 second probably helps. You could get another running back there. So we'll see how that trade goes. That was a lot on that one. Let's see what other ones. I know they made like a makeup piece for that. A
Right.
couple makeup trades, but like okay.
It does seem
Uh,
like Bryce has a window about a 1 year window.
yeah, Bryce and Waldrop are pretty similar in that respect, except Bryce has Josh Allen, who's
Yes.
gonna be good forever.
And
Maybe.
Stephon Diggs, who's Stephon Diggs, he has a really, really good wide receiver
Yeah.
that will be really good next year.
Yeah.
But you think at most Mixon's got one more, like potentially running
RB1.
back 1 year.
Yeah. But
Eckler, you would think has at most one because he's got his contract goes for one more year.
yeah, and I think if he goes anywhere else, his value dips. I mean, also we have no idea how he's going to get used in this offense this year. It could be the same usage, but I don't know if that would even be good for the Chargers. Like they need to get it downfield more,
Mm-hmm.
which means they need to draft a wide receiver probably because neither one of them can stay healthy for any
Yes.
stretch of time. So I wouldn't be
I,
shocked if they went wide receiver and then
I
let
mean, I would
Justin
love,
Herbert sling the
I
ball
would
more.
love to get to draft a young rookie Chargers wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean,
That would be,
it'd
and
be
just
a
have
great
just
deal. I feel
just have
like
Justin Herbert's number one wide receiver for his whole career. That'd be
I,
pretty great.
I feel like they'll go for like a I don't know, like a Jalen Hyatt or somebody like that would be really good for them. They need someone who's fast because Herbert can sling it, and they really haven't had a guy like that. I don't think who can really blow the top off defense with Williams and Keenan Allen. Um, but okay, let's look at some other trades. So you and Zach traded. This is a pretty complicated trade. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this. But Deshaun Watson, you sent Deshaun Watson, Tyquan Thornton, who, I mean, that was one of my favorite trades ever. If you guys don't remember, I had Tyquan Thornton on my team and traded into Lewis. And when I accepted that trade, I thought I was getting Tyquan Thornton. Number one,
You accepted immediately.
I accepted immediately. Number one, don't trade after you've had a few drinks. Number two, or do it if you want to, if that's how you like to enjoy your time. Number two, definitely don't play in too many leagues because you'll get things mixed up in your head. And I just had in my head that he wasn't on my team, and I really liked him. Well, there was, he was on my team already. But you sent him, and you sent a 25 first. Was that a Zach first? Is that
Yes, that's Zach's own first. I was sending back.
okay? So Zach kind of made this trade to maybe hedge his bets a little bit, get his first back.
So that one, it started out where he wanted Deshaun Watson for 224 fourths, 224 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, it certainly did because then you ended up with Malik Willis, which I don't know about him. We'll see. But okay, and we'll get back to this when we start talking about players that maybe some bad teams should target. He kind of fits that mold. Like, who knows? He could turn into something if he figures out how to throw the football.
Which is why the Titans should not trade up to 3 to draft Anthony Richardson.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Richardson is so much better than Malik Willis, I think. But
I agree, but you're still not winning with him next year.
Right. Okay, but you got the 205 in 2023. You got a 2025 first, an Eddie 2025 first. Wow. I don't think I grasped this trade very well when it first happened. And a 2024 second. So, I mean, yeah, so I remember looking at your roster and after I traded you the Eddie first that in 24 and I was like, wait a minute, why does he have both of them, the 24 and 25? But here it is. So you got a bunch of picks. I'm sure it all works out on Keep Trade Cut. I mean, I don't know. Since you were in the trade, I'm going to react to it. I think this is a good trade for you, especially this year. You weren't trying to compete. Eddie's first is very valuable, as we'll talk about in a little bit. Deshaun Watson, you could argue he could have he could come out and be a top 5 quarterback. He could do it. There is that kind of worry. And Zach's team's really good. So that 25 first, I mean, it's good and young, which is terrifying. So that 25 first, in my mind, the calculus in my mind is telling me, okay, you gave up Deshaun Watson and like an early second almost for all that. So I don't know. I like it for you. Any
It's just me.
thoughts?
I've got no plan at quarterback, so that was the thing I was accepting.
And you could have just
Um,
held Watson, and he could have been your plan, but
yes.
but he wasn't in your plans, so that's cool. Um, I didn't write some of these down, so this next one, like this Eddie trade, Eddie sent all kinds of picks to you for a first. Is that what I'm reading? A Zach first in
Yeah,
2024.
I wanted my picks back, and I yeah, and I know that Eddie. It's just like a first round pick has a little cachet, and so I thought I could get a few picks. Um, and in our league, like thirds and fourths have even less value than
Yep.
the most of the dynasty community would talk about.
Right. Yeah. So just to keep
So
in mind, like we're in a 14 team league, right? So the first pick, I own the first pick this year in the third round, which sounds exciting, right? The first pick in the third round. But that's the 29th guy off the board.
mhm.
29. And sure, there's going to be a guy there that I like, but he's going to be a complete dart throw, which doesn't usually start until in the third round in like a 10 team league, you're still getting some interesting players, I think,
Well,
early on because it's
in
like,
that in that most recent mock draft, the NFL one that I sent out, I think it was last week. It was 4 rounds, and there were I think 36 to 37 like good offensive players taken in the top 4 rounds.
right.
So
Yeah. So that's what you're working with here is like that
yeah,
number. So do you want number 29, number 30, whatever. But here's the thing, you could strike gold with these picks, and that's what some people are going to have to hope for.
yeah. So I see this as 2 second round picks for a 24 first, and so the 23 second you know exactly where it is, and the 23 third you know exactly where it is, and the rest are kind of there is still some upside built into Zach's pick where it could I would say he's probably going to make the playoffs, so it could be you know
Yeah.
into 14.
Um
But also you get some more flexibility, so like you can trade the pick since it's a year later.
I don't understand this trade for Eddie, the Zach trade.
The next one, no, neither do I.
Yeah, I don't think I. Yeah, I didn't pay enough attention in the off season to trades, which is probably good for my mental health. But so this one, Zach is sending a 24 first, a Josh 24 first, and a 23 308. That is late. For a 23 first and a 23 early second. So the 1.12 and the 2.04. To me, that is bad value. So like, sure, that
So
Josh first could be good. That's the
it
only upside here.
you would say that on paper it's going to be probably better than the 12th pick, which is what Bryce is. So
Yeah,
you'd say that you say you're getting a little bit of value there, but it's a year later, and you're moving down around from 2 to 3. If it was just the 2 first round picks, I would say those probably have pretty equal value. Like there's still a little bit upside in the 24 pick,
yeah.
but it's a year later. And so I don't know. I think if you're going to add extra, that I would rather have gone up around if I was Eddie instead of going down around. So
I think that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good move for Eddie to like try and get your trade his picks for later picks, like further down the road picks later years.
but I
But
want to like also pick up value as well.
yeah,
So like
exactly, because it's worth more to have a player on your team scoring, and people will pay up for that. But that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. I think this is a good kind of intro to that. Let's just pick out some of the bigger trades here. So you and I traded. I traded an Eddie first for two firsts. So 1.07 and a 1.11, which looks ridiculous on paper. But we know the state of affairs for one Edward Buchanan's team right now. So it's a really interesting trade. Had to mull this one over quite a bit, and I wasn't sure if I would pull the trigger, but it's yeah, I don't know what we can say. We've obviously both like each our side of the deals for now. I mean, maybe it's
Well,
just better for each one of us in our teams how they're built
I
right
would
now.
say that based on the negotiations, I think you won the negotiations because you were always pretty firm on what you would accept. And you know what I mean? Like you didn't move off of your stance.
Yeah,
And so I think this kind of idea started with, you know, like 106 and Juju maybe.
yeah.
And then it was like 106 and second round picks. And then so really got to be almost, the most I could offer. And my thinking was that since I have the 101 this year and I knew that I wouldn't trade that now for these two picks.
Mhm.
And so if it ends up being 101, 102, I still think it's a fair deal. If it ends up being 103, 104, then
Which
I
I
would have
don't see
rather
how
had
that's
these
possible, but it
rather
might
had these
be.
picks.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think this is so like things you got to keep in mind when you're building your dynasty team, and maybe we just kind of transition into that and start talking about. I mean, there are more trades to discuss. We can have other people on maybe to get their opinions on the trades further down the line. There's a lot of interesting ones there, but I want to start here and just kind of jump into our topic today of talking about Eddie's team and just kind of general team building strategy because I think there's some interesting points here, even in a trade like this. Um, what you're trying to do with the dynasty team, what we talked about a lot, is trying to get your value to peak at the right time. And what you have to decide is if you can wait, like you're doing, for that value to build and kind of come to a head and have the best team at a couple years from now, something like that, or are you trying to win now? And I obviously thought, hey, if I trade this pick now, I can get some rookies, and maybe the next couple of years will be really good for me, and I could that'd be better than waiting another year to get a rookie and see what he does. Um, what you got to keep in mind, I guess my biggest point is like rookies take a little bit to develop, even if they're awesome. Like Garrett Wilson, what did Garrett Wilson even finish this year? What was I would love to look that up. Um, let's see. We got Zach's team. So Garrett Wilson finished as wide receiver 21. And that's great.
If you only count the games that Zach Wilson didn't play, he's a lot higher.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So if he had Aaron Rodgers throwing to him the whole year, it might be he might have finished wide receiver 5 or something ridiculous. Like we all know he's really really good, but the stars don't always align even for really good players. And for rookies, that's like a pretty awesome season, wide receiver 21.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So that's something you have to keep in mind when you're trading for these picks. Like, it's going to take a year or two for these guys to develop. So I went out and traded some picks for first year players like Pickens and Damian Pierce because now we're over the hump. It's year 2 and they should start producing in some way. Maybe they take the next step. That's when you see year 2, year 3 guys take the next step. So I'm trying to build my value at one point in time, which is soon. Like maybe not this year, but maybe next year. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But trying to time that all
But
up is key.
but is like DeAndre Swift your oldest player that
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I have
Yeah.
a very young team. Like, yeah, DeAndre Swift might be my oldest like relevant player. I
Hmm.
don't know what could how. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson might be my oldest player, actually.
Yeah, is he a year
I think he might be a
4
year
player?
older. Yeah, I think he's a
Okay.
year older. Deontay Johnson's my oldest player. I mean, comparing that to the nursing home that is Waldrop's team.
Hmm.
Matt had this idea for the pod where we were going to talk about Eddie's team because, well, we look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, what is Eddie going to do? What would we do? You know, what moves would we start making? So I want to start out with letting you kind of go into what your thoughts are. Let's just pretend like this is an orphan team. You know,
Hmm.
you're getting this team. You're hopping in the league, and we're like, hey, you know, here you go. This is what you got. You know, what do you do with it? I think that'll be it'll be an interesting exercise. And maybe we just start out with for the listeners who don't want to look up Eddie's team right now in our league. I tried to write down notable players. I got Cade Otton, Zamir White, Zach Ertz, and Zay Jones. That's where my list ended. Maybe James Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I didn't know he
Well,
had James Robinson. I'd have Jacoby Myers on there.
Jacoby Myers. There you go.
Hmm.
Jacoby Myers. That's another one. Forgot to write that one down. And then a bunch of picks this year. Bunch of 23 picks. The 1.13, the 1.14, the 207, 208, 304, 307, 308, 403, 408. So a lot of stuff. 24. He's got a couple firsts. He does not own his own first in the next 2 years. We just went over that. You own his first. Um, so so where do we start with a team like this? And what should be Eddie's mindset? You feel like?
So I think, as you mentioned, have a timeline in mind and have a plan of how you're going to get there. And so Eddie, as soon as the draft happens, he will have all of his 26 picks.
Right.
And so in the 26th season, he will have a player that he used his own pick to draft, right?
In theory, yes.
And so, do we think this team can compete for the playoffs next year?
No. No.
You would think he's got 4 picks where you would expect to draft a relevant fantasy player this year.
Yeah. So 1.13,
Yeah.
1.14, 207, and 208. You could
You
get some
shouldn't,
relevant players
yeah.
there.
You wouldn't think you're not in dart throw territory. Like if these picks don't pan out, they would be called busts and not, you know, missed home runs, things like that.
Right.
And so those 4 guys plus the people you mentioned, not not a competitive team. And of the people you mentioned, so and then do we think compete for the playoffs in 24?
I don't think so. I think it's gonna be hard unless like he somehow hits on every
So
pick.
then so 4 this year and then 3, say 2 fantasy relevant picks next year. That's 6. So still not really even a full starting lineup.
Right.
So I wouldn't basically I wouldn't trade for. It's interesting. Basically, I would if I were me, I would target 26 to try and be good. And so I would be open to trading picks for young players that are already in the league. But the guiding principle would be I don't want to trade my 26 picks. And I only want players on my team that are going to be good. I only want to expend any kind of capital on players that will be good in 26, 27, and 28.
Yeah, and let's be more specific about that because I know people talk about this a lot, but we brought this up a bunch of times. But like there are positions that you want to target more than others, right?
Hmm.
If you're spending significant draft capital on a running back with your 23 picks, then they're probably not going to be relevant in a couple of years. I mean, it's just unlikely. So wide receivers, much more longevity. QBs, obviously, but we are in a one quarterback league, so. But Eddie doesn't have a quarterback. He has Tom Brady right now. Um, so yeah, I completely agree with what you're talking about. It's just like having a timeline, not trading your 26 picks. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but like there are some people that definitely should not be trading their 26 picks, and Eddie's one of them. I think Waldrop's another one, but I just don't. I don't know. He'll probably just get those and throw them immediately to try to win. I wouldn't trade him, but it is a really tough situation. If you're trying to compete, you want to use every asset you can
Hmm.
to do that.
But
But
also, Eddie's not going to be penalized for having points on his team because he
right,
doesn't own his first round picks. So he doesn't have to jettison
good,
aging players.
right.
He can play like a buy low, sell high kind of game and do a lot of things like that. But
He,
for these draft picks, like I wouldn't draft running backs this year or next year.
yeah, and okay, and so that's an interesting question because you look at his picks, and he's got the 1.13, 1.14, and I'm thinking about this draft, and it's like, well, that's right where a bunch of running backs are probably gonna go. So it's like he's gonna have to juggle like best player available
Hmm.
versus
Yeah, exactly.
um,
He's got a lot of picks in a very running back heavy draft.
yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of good tight ends this year. There's some
Yes.
QBs. He could take a QB with one of these picks. I expect him to. It just depends on how rich he wants to go. Does he want to spend one of his firsts on like a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, or does he? Which I mean, wouldn't be a terrible choice. Like to secure that, then you don't have to think about it. Maybe they develop into something awesome. But wide receivers would be good if they're there, and tight ends. But running backs just kind of scary right now for him.
But
Uh,
also, draft running back, they're going to have the most trade value
Immediately,
next year.
yeah,
Yeah.
very very
And
quick.
so in a year, so if one of the wide receivers has one good game, their value's not going to jump up a whole bunch. But if he drafts a running back at 113 and, they end up like Damian Pierce and they are the only running back in town and they have good games, you can be able to get at least a 24 first, if not more.
Yeah, exactly. Look what Zach just
Yeah.
got. What 2 seconds and a pick swap for Pierce, basically.
Yeah.
So
So I think if I'm Eddie, my ideal first round picks might end up like if Michael Meyer drops to me,
mm,
that'd be amazing. If Don Kincaid gets a first round draft capital in a great spot, maybe just try, see if you can lock up tight end and quarterback
I feel like
kind of right away.
Justin's gonna take one of those guys at 108. Like I just feeling in my bones there. But yeah, I completely agree. One of those guys would be great. But yeah, it's the point you made about running backs is really interesting. I think for if it were me, I would be looking to just scour the waiver wire for so we're gonna have to cut some players
Hmm.
at some point. So some guys are gonna drop on the waiver wire, and I think if I were Eddie, I would be pouncing. I mean, anybody should be, but I'd be pouncing on any running backs that get dropped, just in case something happens and there's an injury, and all of a sudden they're the guy for a few weeks. Like someone might trade you a future pick for that.
Hmm. But
Um,
also, yeah, but treat no player on your roster as precious. Like if
oh yeah,
someone, if
absolutely.
yeah,
I completely
it's
agree with that. If someone's like, "This is I gotta have this guy," then and I'll pay up for him. Like, just accept that almost immediately.
yeah. If I could get a second for anyone on his team, I would take that.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't. I just don't think you will.
I mean, in any year.
In any, yeah, I guess in any year. If it was like, even if it was like okay. Are you targeting certain years for picks? Because you talked about like being competitive in 2026, right? Like, is there a certain year that you're wanting to stack picks? Are you trading back picks to stack in a certain year?
So you also need to balance it where Eddie still wants to have fun. And
Right.
so, like, the absolute smartest move might be to trade every single first you have for a first a year later and something,
Mm,
and then trade that first for a first the year after and something, and just constantly try and build and never actually add to your team. But that's not going to be fun.
no.
Um,
You've been testing that theory a little bit, but you've got a much. I'm not even gonna compare your situation. I mean, if Eddie is trying to emulate what you are doing right now, he's like 3 years behind almost.
and also,
So
it's just I enjoy doing that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
even if so, like, I'll still be happy if I'm always just in it for draft picks for the next 10 years.
yeah, yeah. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that's it's much sooner than later. Um, but yeah, I think that's what we can play that game of always trading back, always trading back. But yeah, I would totally be open if I were him to all the 26 picks when they become available. People are gonna want to trade like crazy then. Competitors will. So I would be totally open to, hey, I'll give you whatever for 26 picks, seconds, firsts, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Okay, well, so when I was going through the trades, something popped in my mind as kind of the king of buy low, which might be the king of buying players that are just in bad situations forever. Um, but I one thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about Eddie's team and kind of what I would be doing is kind of similar to the moves I've been making with my own team of just buying players that people aren't excited about, but
Mm-hmm.
are talented. Like, no one's excited about DJ Moore. No one's excited about Deontay Johnson now. No one's excited about a ton of my guys on my team. Trey Lance. And I look back on some of these trades. So and it kind of looks okay right now, but there was one trade that happened not that long ago where Eddie sent Trey Lance to me for a 2023 205, which isn't really bad value, and a 25 Zach third. But at the time, we didn't even know anything about Brock Purdy. This was like Jimmy Garoppolo. Was this Jimmy Garoppolo time? No, it wasn't. This was January. Um, so maybe we don't know. Maybe I need to look back on that. But in any case, the Trey Lance situation's gotten worse. We don't really know if they've come out and said Purdy's the starter, but Trey Lance is the exact type of guy that I would be targeting if I were Eddie.
Yep.
Every player like that, where if the cards, go right for him, he can explode in value. He's on a good team. The narrative around him isn't very good right now, but is it possible that he ends up being a top 10, top 8 quarterback if he plays and starts and does good things? Yes, very very
Mm-hmm.
probable there. So Eddie needs to take advantage of those situations. He can wait it out, and situations can change. A guy can sign with a new team if you think he's really talented, and he signs with a new team. Um, he might explode in value. That's the kind of strategy I would be employing, I think. Um,
I'd love Trey Lance on the Falcons.
yeah, exactly. What if he gets traded to the Falcons all of a sudden? Like, that's be
Yeah,
amazing. But I guess they're happy with Desmond Ritter. They say. I love those reports. Like,
I know.
it's like, yes, I'm sure you are. He's going to take a big step up.
It just
But
means Edmonton will never trade Desmond Ritter, though.
I know. I got pretty excited this week. He wanted to trade the 102, but I wasn't willing to give too much for it. So, um, trade 102 for 103 and some change. We couldn't make any progress. So,
Would you be trading up so you'd have the choice between the two, or
yeah, basically. I
okay.
mean, uh, I view them pretty equally, but like, what happens if on draft day? I don't want to give away my strategy here, but what happens if on draft day we find out that Gibbs goes to I don't know, a great situation, Miami or something like that, and JSN goes to Baltimore
Baltimore.
or the Patriots. Like, oh God,
I
if I need a tiebreaker between these guys, then that would do it for me. But I think either way, I'm going to be happy. I don't really care too much. One of them's going to be on my roster, but yeah, that's that was my thinking. Is only if draft day went kind of sideways for one of them.
hmm
Um, where were we? I guess any other thoughts on kind of strategy for Eddie? And I mentioned waiver wire. Playing the waiver wire will be kind of huge, which I really hope he does because he traded for Fab in one of these trades. Hope he actually uses it.
I would just always aim for top 20 picks.
Mm,
So any kind of consolidating you can do, anytime you can trade one thing for two things in the top 20, always good. Because even if you make all these firsts and all these seconds that you got, you still haven't drafted a full starting lineup. So
right.
if you can turn one of your firsts into multiple picks down the line, like a 24 first and second, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough with those being the back end. I mean, to be fair to Eddie, I mean he traded for these firsts, and they just wound up being the wrong ones, right? Like to get the 1.13 and 1.14, that's really unfortunate. If they had lost different games in the playoffs, Waldrop or David, he could be staring at like the 109, 110, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
111, I don't know with David, but yeah, that's unfortunate. Hopefully, he still gets a good player there. I don't think all hope is lost though.
No.
This situation can turn around faster than you think, and you could strike gold in the draft with a player or two and be back in the hunt in no time. And there are two firsts here in 2024. Like we talked about that Josh first. If Josh has a bad year, that's a good player coming Eddie's way.
I feel like Josh's team is good, but not as deep as some of the other teams, so wouldn't be able to withstand an injury.
Like an injury
well
or two,
others.
yeah, I mean, in our league, an injury or two is pretty devastating for anybody, and unless you're Zach. Yeah, we're just gushing over Zach's team. I'm sure he's gonna love this, but there's just too much depth.
It's all Alex and Matt's fault. That Zach's team is so good because they traded him all the picks, and then he did much better with their picks than they did with their picks. So
yeah. Well, I'm not one to speak. So I traded the amazing team for whatever, a bunch of transactions. Now I'm just trying to buy low on everything because I have nothing else I can do.
I do feel I'll give Alex a little credit on the holes he's poked in my strategy. It's like, oh, now I've got these picks, and so maybe next year that Eddie pick turns into Marvin Harrison Jr. It'd be cool if he was as good as AJ Brown was this year. I'm gonna get a really good running back this year. I mean, I did already have Kenneth Walker, but,
yeah.
And eventually I'm going to get a quarterback, but I did already have Trevor Lawrence.
It happens. It happens. It happens. Yeah. I don't know. You hear all this advice that's like, trade your guys for future picks. That is common dynasty content when you're searching YouTube. People will tell you to do that. Trade your running backs. You don't need running backs right now. Well, maybe you're more competitive than you think. Maybe you're really a running back away from from competing something like that. It's hard to say. A lot of luck involved. But yeah, I'm interested to hear Eddie's point of view on all this. I'm gonna see if he can come on maybe sometime next week to talk through his team. He was unavailable tonight, unfortunately. We can get his thoughts, his takeaways from all this. I don't know. Do you want to go over the last few trades?
Sure. I just think if I'm Eddie, he's in a part where he can wait until he's got leverage on trades.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he can wait it out. He's got time. And what we were saying before, I mean, he has time to wait for players to develop and situations to change. He doesn't have to trade a player right away. But I would be tempted anytime like an injury happens and a mediocre talent gets a starting job, I would be trading that guy as soon as I could for future stuff because he's not going to be in your plans. That's about the only sure thing that I know you should do strategy wise. And don't trade your. I was going to say don't trade your picks in 26. I'm just going to say that again.
But until then, he doesn't care how many points he scores. So if he wants to take advantage of teams that start to pivot away from their win now teams to future, then he can be the one to trade some of his seconds, even trade some of his 24 firsts.
Right.
In next offseason, if he doesn't want to make the picks, he can trade them for 26-year-old wide receivers if a team is looking to get off of someone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right, so I think we left off at a trade, one of my trades. We sort of talked about it, but I traded.
Is this the Zach, Pickens, and Pierce?
Zach. Yeah, I traded for Pickens and Pierce, these guys were just sitting on his bench, which just speaks to the depth that he has. I traded the 110, a 24 second, a 25 second, and a 23. I guess I also traded the 23 111, but I got the 112 back as well. Yes. So it's kind of moving back a pick. Yeah.
How many first round picks have you had in this offseason so far? Like how many out of the 14?
I've had a lot of them. I don't know. But now I'm only up 2, right? So here I am. But yeah, so now I have Pierce, who Singletary is there now. I'm not sure. That's not the biggest.
Oh, did he sign with the Texans?
He did, yeah. Yeah, Singletary is with the Texans, so that's some mediocre competition for Dameon Pierce. And unless they draft like a big name, I'm not too scared of that situation for him. Hopefully he's good for a year or two. And then Pickens, I'm going to be honest, I watched a lot of Steelers games for Deontay Johnson at the end there, and I started being like, man, this Pickens guy, I really like him.
Pickens he's very talented for sure.
Yeah, he's talented. Obviously, the separation is a concern, but yeah, he's super fun to watch, which should count for something on your fantasy team, but it doesn't. Any thoughts on that one?
I wouldn't have done it, but I'd be happy to trade for Pickens. I don't know if I would have traded for both.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's an unfair deal. I think it's fair because
it's the talent
it's like one
Pierce.
It's like 1 first and 2 seconds for Pierce and Pickens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're late. So you gave up 111. Is that right?
I gave up 110 and 111.
Oh right, 110. I see that.
Yeah, 110 and 111. So the 10th and 11th guys in our draft for.
So you have to think that at the very least, those picks, like at best, those picks would give you similarly talented and situational players.
Yeah, and then there's the seconds there on top of that, which is a lot. It was a lot to give up. We'll see what happens, but. They could explode. Pickens, I think it's a lot about Pickens, see if he explodes in value, or if he doesn't. And then Pierce, if he's a steady RB2, then Pierce could be a great flex play for me, or That would be nice.
But as soon as those picks have names attached to them, I think the trade's going to look a lot more balanced.
Yeah, I think so too. That's kind of where my head was at. I'm just not going to love the 10th and 11th guy off the board as much as I like these two guys.
Yeah, if it's Zach Evans and Jalen Hyatt, you're like, well, okay, I'm fine with Pearson.
Yep, exactly. And then we'll see.
And
you
still get in this trade, you still had 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think I traded 12 to you eventually.
Yep. Yep.
Let's see other trades. We had some trades for firsts. I think you moved up into the first round. Some more.
Yep, with you, and then
with Zach.
With Zach again. Yeah.
Which is cool. You're just trying to get Keishawn Butte at the time.
No, I don't need to.
Yeah. All right. Other trades to talk about. Christian Kirk was sent out for a 204 to Zach, plus Hal and P. Ryan. That's I don't know what to make of that one. Not much to say there, I guess. I don't know. Kirk. I guess with Ridley there, that Zach's thinking Kirk will
I think
reproduce.
Zach just wants... No, Zach got Christian Kirk, didn't he?
I think... Oh, yeah, Zach got Christian Kirk. You're right.
No, I think Zach just wants the...
Yeah, you're right. Zach got Christian Kirk.
Yeah. Zach just wants the entire Jacksonville offense.
That's fair. Man. That just makes me sad. I wanted to buy ETN at one point for Chase, but that did not happen. All right, and then a couple more trades. You sent out Matt Stafford. That was funny. For some fourths.
Alex and I have actually made a trade.
That's impressive. Is that your first?
It's a big. No, I think I sent him a fourth when he was begging to get back. Not begging. When he asked to just get back into the draft to have fun. I think I had 3/4.
How many times did you trade just in general before in redraft? Do you feel like it was infrequent? I feel like,
especially in the last few years, was pretty infrequent. Just because it was either like you had to be taking advantage of someone to get a meaningful improvement to your team, right?
Yeah.
Or you just had to have, because it was pretty rare that someone, I've got 4 great running backs. You've got 4 great wide receivers. It's a perfect fit.
Yeah. Yeah. It just doesn't happen in redraft. Redraft is just like thinking back on it, it really is just, can I sell 2 decent players for a great player? Like that was the strategy. It was like, try this one trick and your teammates or your league mates will hate you, like, I'm glad we don't have to think about it that way. We have like the natural trade partners. Oh,
absolutely.
You're trying to win now? Okay, I'll give you this old guy and for a future pick. Speaking of which, the next one I want to talk about, old guy Derrick Henry sent by Penny to Bryce for a 25 first. What do you think about that one?
So I'm sure he had offers this year for 23 firsts for Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have had anything that's a first and a second this year?
Maybe.
Well,
maybe also, when he was playing well.
Also, Anthony made the playoffs, so
you gotta factor that in. He tried to win.
And there was no reason, and the way it broke, he could have easily made the semis, and even with those 23 thirds, they were all going to be playoff picks.
Right. One thing that's interesting about this, I will say, is when I saw this trade go down, I was like, oh wait, Derrick Henry was on the market? Like, I might have thrown something at that. Like, could I have gotten Derrick Henry and added him to my team? Like, it'd be a weird fit, but I don't know. Ask around. I would recommend that. Ask around, see what people are thinking, because I don't know if I could have beaten that, but
that's the thing. What offer beats a pretty high upside 25 first? And he's got David's 25 first.
Yeah. Yeah. All he needs is Waldrop to complete the Triforce.
you still have Waldrop's 25 first? So I guess you could have offered Waldrop's 25.
I could have, yeah. I also have his 24 first. Waldrop, if you're listening,
which has some upside for sure.
You should, yeah. What happened to Eddie? We don't want that to happen to Waldrop, because Eddie won't throw a fit, but Waldrop will throw a fit in 2 years if he blows up his team, doesn't get his first, and it takes like 3 years for him to rebuild. I could see him not happy about Dynasty for a long time. So trade for your first. Don't make sure you have your first to tank. Like just Dynasty 101 there.
So if Anthony just trades his old guys, doesn't trade his youth, he's got his own picks the next 2 years. If he just adds on, then gets to add on high-end talent in 25.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's setting himself up really nicely. Maybe he could have beaten that offer, but I think it would have been like that plus a second.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't feel like you're gonna get any 24 firsts that have that much upside.
Right.
Just because I think everyone whose picks are probably going to end up in the top 5 are either not in a position to trade for Derrick Henry or, they're their own picks, so they're not good. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was a bad deal. I think he's setting himself up really well. Yeah. I'm glad he traded him.
I think you could have beaten that trade, but I think you're the only one that could have beaten that trade.
Yeah, in a weird position where I have some firsts that I would be okay with parting with.
Which is why it was difficult because at the very beginning of the offseason, I was definitely toying with the idea of trading the first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I could trade him to Jordan, but like, why would Jordan offer all that? Because no one else can offer anything close to that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had some interesting trades go back and forth for Kyle Pitts. That was those were some fun times. Looking back on that, it's a tough situation trading these like really super high valued assets, especially in our league. Like, I'm definitely feeling this a lot with my team. You want we only start 8.
Yes.
And starting 8 is like a key part of all this that I have just ignored for months and months because I'm picking up players that are just kind of okay. They're kind of okay. They could be good. That doesn't win you the league. Guys like Garrett Wilson win you the league. Saquon, those guys win you the league. And you need a bunch of those guys to do it. Now, 14 team kind of makes it easier to have some weaker parts to your roster. But yeah, the premium assets, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, should be expensive. And if they're young, like why would you even bother trading them? Like you've found that piece for your roster.
Well, but also it's just so one, Pitts is in a really weird position because he had a terrible year.
Yeah.
Is in a bad situation and a bad quarterback. But at least if you trade a Garrett Wilson, there's a Chris Olave and there's a JSN and there's Jameson Williams and just there are many good wide receivers. And so even though Pitts wasn't good last year, there are only like 4 good tight ends.
Right. And
like
they're
4
old.
tight ends that make any difference.
Yeah, and the other ones are old.
Well, then Hawkinson was the 4th.
Oh, yeah.
And
I guess Waller could be something, but we'll see.
And so there's like, well, do I trade Pitts? But then because then I'd be in the same situation I'm at with quarterback where it's like, yeah, I got, I think, really good value for the quarterbacks I traded, but now I don't have a quarterback or I plan a quarterback or really an easy way to get a quarterback.
Yeah.
Or at least like a top 5 quarterback.
Right.
And then because of everything you were offering for Pitts, it's just obvious that it's almost impossible to get a good tight end right now.
Yeah, it is. Like, it'd be easier for me to just try and pay up for Kelsey, but I think that would be not bright on my part because my team's not good enough right now to go all in on something like that. I don't think.
Yeah, but the rest of your team is better than Alex's team was last year.
Mm,
So
yeah,
plus, I mean, Kelsey really
boost your value.
the last year, and you would think maybe next year, Kelsey's enough by himself pretty much with a reasonable team around him to really make you a competitor.
Yeah, yeah, but the asking price is astronomical right now. So I think because picks don't matter. But anyway, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a tough position. Tight end's a tough position.
But
That's
maybe with this class, and I think maybe we just get more tight ends, and so maybe
yeah.
Pitts isn't. Maybe it was a mistake because maybe Pitts isn't nearly as valuable next
There's
year
there's a
as he
lot of
is right now.
interesting young guys that could develop into good tight ends. You just need the right. You really need the right combination. You need those tight ends they're mainly pass catchers, right? And not every system really has that. And their usage can be really frustrating. And they
It
need
also
time
helps
to develop.
if you're on a team that has a quarterback, like period.
Period. Yeah.
Which the Falcons didn't have.
I mean, look at like Evan Ingram. He never had a great year, and then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence figures it
Doug
out.
Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden he's got a great situation and started balling out at the end of the year, which is hilarious.
If you've got a few minutes, I think I have a fun topic.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Who do you think is the most likely bottom 5 teams next year?
Oh wow, bottom 5. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So that is a loaded question. I can't wait for people to make fun of me for my picks. But I guess that's what happens when you throw out an opinion.
The thing that makes it really hard, just to kind of set this up. So Roush and Colin were 4 and 5 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And especially Roush, like Roush's team is good.
Yeah.
Like on paper, it looks really good. And so it's like, so that's why, like I look at my team and like, even if I hit on all my picks, like, is my team next year going to be better than Justin's team was this year?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough question. I mean, he's got so many good players. And he's got his picks.
And extra picks too, yeah.
Yeah, he's got 3 in the top. Well, he's got 104, 108, and 211. The 211, I don't know what that'll be, but 104, 108 will be really good. Probably a running back and a tight end, and that kind of fills his starting lineup, but we'll see what happens. He needs running backs, like, badly. He only has Najee.
But a lot of people do.
Yeah, but a lot of people do. He's got Tyler Algier, too. But I'm scared for his career next year. I feel like somebody's coming in, and his name is Bijan.
I mean, Atlanta really shouldn't take Bijan at 8.
Yeah.
But it'd be great if they did.
It'd be great. Yeah. Okay, so back to your question. Okay.
Yes.
We just talked about Eddie's team. I think that's a given for me.
It's going to be in the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a bottom 5 team.
You don't have to put them in order if you don't want to upset anyone. But
I won't put them in order. You don't have a quarterback right now. I feel like if you could get a well, you have Jordan Love, and he could be a quarterback. And you've got some good players, and you got Bijan. So I feel like things could change really quickly for you.
I think I'd have to decide that I want them to change.
Yeah,
you could, though. The position that I've put myself in is what I'm hoping for.
You could decide to do that. You don't. Yeah, you could go all in and trade some of these future assets, and you could have a team that's competitive, and who knows what happens? You make the playoffs. So that's the hard thing to predict about your team, because you have a bunch of assets to work with, right? Like, you could cash those in at any point in time. So if you keep your course of just, kind of stacking up the draft, which would be pretty intelligent, I think, if you got like a top 5 pick this upcoming year plus Eddie's pick, then that's 2 like pretty guaranteed starters for you on top of what you've got already. and maybe you somehow figure out your quarterback situation, then next year would be pretty exciting for you. So I'm guessing that's your strategy, and that's why I would guess you would be a bottom 5 team if you don't invest in this year. But if you do, then sky's the limit. So
I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could make the playoffs if I wanted to.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, like in any market, you still have to have people buying. If you're trying to sell these picks, like who's buying them?
Pitts would have to be the number 1 tight end,
right?
And I'd have to trade for a top 5 quarterback to have a chance.
And who's going to trade you that top 5 quarterback? They're all on competitive teams for the most. I think all top 5 quarterbacks are on a competitive team. Turns out a top 5 quarterback makes a competitive team. Speaking of which, I think Edmondson's still not competitive. I think,
but if he just got a quarterback,
if he got a quarterback,
Javonte's healthy and he got a quarterback.
He's in a weird situation where, okay, like JMO and Javonte are both question marks coming into the season. I think I love both of them, and I'm a big Jameson Williams believer. I think he's really talented. But we haven't seen him do anything yet, so we're really projecting pretty hard about what his role is going to be. He's got Amon-Ra, Sun God, on that team to compete with. It's an ascending offense. Everybody seems to like the fantasy production for the Lions. Also the Browns. I don't know what I was thinking. And then we've got Javonte Williams. If he's healthy, obviously that's going to be great. But he doesn't have any other running backs. And then he's got a good tight end, like you said, with Hawkinson, but no QB. I just think there's too many question marks, and he just doesn't have enough early picks, like what you were talking about before, those top 20 picks. He's only got 2 in the top 20. So you would have to hit on both of those picks. 102 is probably going to be a hit. And then 202 is a question mark. Could be anything. But you would hope it would be productive. That could be a running back, and 202 could be a running back, and you hope Pickett takes a step forward. That's a situation where this all works out. But yeah, I'd feel confident about saying him as a bottom 5 team again, unless things just really go his way in the draft. He could pick up a quarterback in the draft, and he could be awesome. That would be really big for him.
Do you think it's best for this team to be patient like that and wait for another year?
I don't think so. I mean, he's got enough stuff to where he could go either way. So, what could he trade? Could he downgrade a little bit on one of his receivers to get a receiver and a QB or something like that? I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, if he doesn't want to compete next year, I don't see the point in keeping Javonte Williams and Debo.
Yeah, both those players I would definitely consider trading. But I think Debo's lost a lot of value now, unfortunately.
But also, Edmondson is my blueprint for my 24 season, where it's like, it doesn't matter if you have good players on your team. If you don't have a quarterback, you're going to have a top 2 pick.
yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true.
Not a bad quarterback. If you legitimately don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, it's a strategy. The process, baby. Okay, so what have we named? 3 teams so far?
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, this is where it gets really, really difficult. I could be there. I could look at my team. There could be some things that go wrong.
Let's see. Let's pull up your team. I think if Swift actually is, if he's nothing, that hurts. If Brees is hobbled for a while and doesn't get back.
You could play this game with every one of my players, so I'm looking forward to you going through each one. I mean, Brees, if he's hobbled.
Rashard Bateman, but Rashard Bateman.
Yeah. Dulcich, could be something in the Sean Payton offense.
I would think so. Yeah, I'd be excited about that. That was Darius Toney.
Kadarius Toney sitting there. Ayuk, who knows?
Trey McBride
sitting on my bench. I've got just a lot of upside. Justin Fields, good times had by all.
So do both of your first round picks start for you?
I don't know. One of them probably does. My 103 probably does, but I'd have a hard time. Even if I got Quentin Johnston, I would have a hard time putting him over some of these guys at first. And I guess it just depends on the landing spot.
Do you think you make that pick, or do you think you end up trading it?
I have no idea. I haven't got any offers on it, so probably making the pick. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
So, for example, would you do 107 for both of Eddie's firsts?
That's tough. Maybe. It just depends on who's there, I guess. But yeah, it really hinges on what Colin and Justin do, I think. Because I feel pretty confident you're going to take a receiver at 106.
I mean, unless they both take receivers.
If they both take receivers, then you're in trouble with that, and I'm even more trouble.
No, I'd love to take Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, something like that.
If he's the one there at 6.
Yeah. But yeah, if that scenario happens, then I might think about trading it. But I don't know. I've got depth with my team now, which I didn't before. Yeah. So
I don't think. And you also like if someone gets hurt, you have tradable assets. You don't have assets that you have to keep those first. Like you'll have firsts that are going to be in the second half of next year that you can trade.
Yeah, but I think my team's very volatile. Like so many things could go so many directions for me. It'll be a fun year. So
somehow you have like 8 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I'm not.
You're like probably gonna get like 10 starting games out of.
Yeah, well, you'll probably get 14.
I'm probably dropping like 3 of those guys at least when we come to cuts, but we'll see what happens. I definitely have
somehow you have 2 San Francisco quarterbacks and neither one is going to start.
Yeah, that's pretty funny right there with Darnold and Trey Lance. So I guess I'm looking at the different teams, and I feel like my team could definitely finish bottom 5. It could also hopefully win a championship, but I think that's definitely on the table. I don't know if I'd pick myself or not, but I'm having a hard time looking through these teams, picking somebody else. Like I guess, and this is the hard part about it because people could go all in.
Well, the one I'm worried about is let's pull up Colin Missbach's team.
Colin Missbach's team. All right, so Kyler may or may not play for a little bit. He's got Goff, who's fine, totally fine. So that's not killing him. He's got Dobbins, who should be back to.
Jared Goff is just a good enough quarterback to get the 5th pick in the draft and not higher.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got Dobbins, which isn't like a minus. That's a good running back.
It's a minus for your number 1 running back.
It's a minus for your number 1 running back. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
and then
love to have him on my team, but
right, exactly. And then after that, not a lot of options. Singletary is now the 1B. I'm hoping to Pierce. Hopefully he doesn't come out as the 1A. That would make me a sad person, but it could happen. I'm not crazy. I see those scenarios. He's got Justin Jefferson. Any team with Justin Jefferson on it is has a path to relevancy. Drake London, obviously I've been trying to trade for him all offseason. Thank you, by the way, for talking Colin out of all the trades,
Excuse me, you were the one in the first LOG podcast where you told him never trade Drake London.
I did.
This is all your fault.
It's all my fault. After that, kind of grim.
I think 106 in Juju is a great offer for Drake London. That's fine.
Yeah, like Jordan Addison plus Juju for Drake London. It's not terrible. It's not insulting. Dylan, I think
tight end now.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time with this team. I kind of agree. and he's only got one pick this year. He better nail that pick. So that's where
it kind of has to be a running back, like if he wants to be a competitive team next year.
Yeah,
That's kind of the position he's put himself in. Like if he had a few seconds, then load up on second round running backs. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what I would do.
I just want Colin to see all the running backs that go in round 2 this year, and how some of them will do well next year, and be like, you know what?
Second round picks.
Second round picks are okay too. I'm just gonna first and seconds. Those are the ones I care about, not just firsts anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. Trying to pick another team because I'm not sure if I count myself yet.
I wouldn't put you in most likely. All right, so we have so far 3 people from the top 5 this year. And then 4 is Justin, and then 6 is Josh. So do we think either one of those to fill out?
Jeez. Like you said, Josh is like an injury away from having a rough team, but he's got a good team right now.
And he's got quite a few picks as well, like nothing super high, but
yeah, he's got a bunch of picks, so he can get some depth. That's for sure.
well, and he might get the Ravens' new number 1 wide receiver in Odell Beckham. And if Michael Thomas actually plays next year,
yeah, Michael Thomas is kind of a wild card for him.
Wando Robinson comes back, so maybe his depth next year won't be as bad as it looked this year.
He's got Alexander Madison. Okay.
Yeah, and Montgomery's in a better situation
than he was before.
Than he was last year, and he still has Jamar Chase, and apparently Josh Jacobs is the best running back in the world.
Apparently, I've been preaching it for years, and then I traded him. Good times. Yeah, Jacobs, Chase, Montgomery. Tua probably starts.
Derek Carr, though, is still there.
Derek Carr is available, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't see Josh doing worse next year than he did this year, unless he gets terrible luck.
Yeah, I agree. That's probably an option, though.
I think Chase's team is too good.
I agree. Chase's team is too good.
I haven't looked through Justin's team yet, but since he was 4, maybe Justin.
I feel like Justin's team's too good.
Should we look at Penny's team? Like, is Penny the... Like, someone has to be in the top 5.
Yeah, someone has to be there.
The bottom 5.
Yeah, Penny, so Penny has Herbert, Olave, Miles Sanders, Terry McLaurin, Darren Waller. That right there is that enough? I guess is the question. Plus the 109. Is that enough? Might get a running back at 109 to fill that spot. Kenneth Gainwell could be something. Cordero Patterson. Yeah, I could see this team. Yeah, I could definitely see this. There's not a lot of depth here right now, so I think
I would say his like average outcome's probably lower than your team.
Yeah, because like
but
something,
less,
one thing happens.
Less volatile.
Yeah, one thing happens, and yeah, it's like a Waller injury, or he's got to.
That's what happened to him last year, and
yeah, I like his nickname. His nickname is "Please Be Good." He does need that. Okay. Well, I think that's it. So Eddie, Colin, you, what do we say? Miss
Colin, Penny,
and Penny are the options.
Well, let's just do a quick look at Justin's team and see if we want to
trash his team. Yeah, perfect.
All right, so he definitely needs a running back.
Definitely needs a running back
to be competitive. I'm not saying he has to he doesn't have to be competitive. He doesn't want to be. Maybe 2 running backs, honestly.
Yeah.
Tight end's not great or good. Tight end's not good. He needs another. Is Darnell Mooney flexible in our league?
I don't know. People aren't excited about DJ Moore in
Okay.
Chicago, so it's hard for me to get excited about the second option.
Yeah. So he definitely needs a starting running back, a starting tight end, and another startable flex
Right.
to be competitive. But does he have enough to keep out of the bottom 5?
Yeah. I mean, he's got Joe Burrow and Waddle. Those guys are going to score an
Judy should be
enormous
better.
amount of points. Judy should.
Yeah, but they
be
were on
better.
his team last year, and he's got the 4th pick.
Yeah, but got the
That's
number.
what's so crazy is to
number
look
8
at
and
the
number
really good
4.
players. Look at the really good players on Justin and Missbach's team and Edmondson's team, and they still were in the bottom 5.
Yeah, I think matchups, injury. Well, I guess it's all about max points for. So, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, because Justin almost made the playoff.
Yeah, he did.
He was in it until the very end.
He pulled a me from a couple of years ago, where I had like the worst team ever and somehow waltzed into the playoffs. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's a Najee injury away from a lot of trouble. He might get.
So I think it sounds like we have 6 contenders for the bottom 5.
That's fair. 6 contenders. But things could change.
Yeah, and I think Justin and Penny's teams are another level of roster.
I
above the
agree.
rest of them, though.
Plus, they've got picks. They've got assets that maybe Edmondson doesn't have. Edmondson's got a lot of picks, but the premium picks, I think Justin and Penny have got to be there.
So let's also say, let's just say that you and Zach make the playoffs next year. Which 2 teams that made it this year don't make it next year?
Ooh. Well, I mean, we just went over this with Penny, right? Like, Penny made the playoffs. I think that's an easy, because we're looking at his team, and it could be bottom 5, we're saying.
And it looks like he's fine with that. Like, trading Derrick Henry, it looks like he's going to be fine if he doesn't make the playoffs next year.
So I think that's an option.
And that's Derrick Henry and Waller are like the 2 like win-win now players that were on his team.
Yeah. And then so we've got what? We've got Waldrop, David, Akey, Bryce. I'm missing one of their Chase. I have a hard time not picking Chase in the playoffs. But I guess it's possible.
His team is so good.
Yeah, his team is really good. Chase, if you've been listening this long, I applaud you. First of all. Second of all, really like your team.
Like his third best receiver is Amari Cooper. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, Etienne, Jalen Hurts, Metcalf, Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. Okay, Zeke is probably not going to be great. Pat Freiermuth, I like him. I don't know if he's top 5 or anything, but he's not hurting him too bad. No. And then Deontay Foreman's sitting there. Like, Deontay Foreman could waltz into the Montgomery role and be like a serviceable back end RB2.
He's also got Khalil Herbert, so
yeah,
I think maybe one of those 2 is good. If Pacheco gets drafted over, that's going to hurt his team.
Yeah, he needs one of the Bears running backs to be something this year in order to take it to the next level, I think, which is betting on the Bears is usually a bad idea, but here I am trading for Justin Fields.
Chase also has 2 first-round picks next year.
That's true, yeah.
He can shore them up that way.
He does. He's probably one of the only people in this that we talk about who has this kind of these assets.
I think you have 2 firsts next year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think Zach has any firsts in 24. Chase has 2. I think Bryce still has his. But then I think that's it. Out of the...
Yeah, it'd be interesting when Bryce pulls the trigger on that 24 first for something. Yeah, I'm certainly not going to pick against Bryce's team after trading for Derrick Henry. I mean, Mike Evans might lose some value this year. I mean, he didn't have a great year last year.
Or he
so-
gets traded and it goes way up.
Yeah, anything could happen there. Kittle will probably be better. I don't know. But Diggs and Allen will just win him a ton of games. Eckler will win him a ton of games if he's healthy.
I think it could be possible that maybe one of those teams decides to try and go for a soft landing if they think they might make the playoffs but not win the championship. Might try and get ahead of it.
Yeah, I think somebody's going to do
Eddie.
that.
I still think Eddie could have pulled that off.
Yeah, he definitely could have, but he didn't, unfortunately. I'm looking at the other teams available, like Akey's team. There's a lot of good players on that team.
But also some players that could be in jail.
There's Alvin Kamara. His running back situation is Ramondre Kamara, who could be in jail, and Rashad White. So, not the strongest room. But Devontae Adams. I mean, man, if we could go time travel a little bit, a couple years ago, this team was killer. A couple years ago.
Yeah.
But it's still good now. We've got AJ Brown. So AJ Brown, Mark Andrews. Well, yeah, I'd say AJ Brown, Mark Andrews, Devontae Adams, Lamar. That's gonna win a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
As long as Lamar Jackson gets a contract from somebody. And so I'm a hard time. I don't see Akey being out of the playoffs. I don't see Bryce being out of the playoffs. I'm looking at David's team. He just won a championship. Is David a possible not make the playoffs team?
Is there who on his team is going to be worse next year than they were this year? Jamal Williams, maybe?
Probably Jamal Williams is not going to fall into the end zone 17 times again.
Pollard is already hurt.
Pollard could be questionable depending on what happens with the draft. They did just tag him, right? So
yes, but it's also possible that he ends up again with the number one quarterback, the number one running back, and the number one wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So,
but David is the only one I could actually see trying to go for that soft landing. It's like if he gets a small injury, then trading McCaffrey at the deadline next year.
Yeah, that is a possibility. Yeah, and Lockett's one of those dudes that everybody in the Dynasty community tells you to go out. Like, if you ever read an article that's like, what's a piece that contenders should buy? Yeah. Tyler Lockett, number one, every single time, because he's disrespected.
Yeah, but Yumi, Zach, and Edmonton are the ones that read those things.
That's true. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know where I am on this. I would have a hard time picking against the champ, but they're all pretty good. And then Waldrop's team is the only one we haven't talked about. This team is old as hell. It is so old. Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb is the young guy on the roster here at the ripe old age of 27. Trying to look, Chris Godwin is also 27. Kelsey.
Yeah, but it says Baker Mayfield, which is the problem.
Yes, yeah. Godwin. I still like Godwin.
There's nothing wrong with Chris Godwin for sure.
Yeah, I would love to grab him in a trade, but I don't think that's happening. So I could have another murky situation wide receiver on my team. I'd love to add to that. Dak will be good. Probably Chubb will be good for sure. I feel really good about Chubb, and then Aaron Jones. So this team's probably making the playoffs.
Well, also let's think. What does a 26 first and a 26 second buy you?
Right. That's a really good point. Yeah. What does a 26 first and second buy you?
I would think you could have got Derrick Henry for that, but that, because you didn't keep any 25 first, you have to wait.
That is true. That is true. You could have talked to Penny about that and maybe gotten that 26 first and second for Derrick Henry. I mean, this team I would like a lot more with Derrick Henry on it, just for this year. Um, but that would be going all in. That would be crazy. 2026, 2027, and 2028 would be maybe the worst years of Waldrop's fantasy football life.
So is it? I think his team is just a little bit too old to do this, but I think it's feasible that you could be competitive and never make a rookie pick.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do that if you keep drafting.
If all these guys were 25 instead of 28,
Mhm.
and then you just kept adding.
You have to add a
one
young
new-
player though. You'd want to add like if you add one dude, he has to be like 23 or 24, something like that. I feel like in order to
That's
make
not
it
who's gonna-
work.
But it's just also all the players that you could trade that first and second for, they're already on competitive teams because they all got traded for last year.
Mm.
Like Derrick Henry was kind of the last, guy.
Yeah, he could go get a Debo Samuel.
Yeah, but if Debo was going to get traded, he would have gotten traded already.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what a 26 first and second gets you. It's not going to get you a guy like Josh Jacobs. I don't think. Might, but that would be an
It's like
interesting trade.
it would be a running back that he trades for, right? Even though he's like his wide receivers are.
His wide receivers are Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, hooked on a Thielen.
Well, I mean, he does have the Panthers' #1 wide receiver.
He does.
So there's that.
Allen Robinson. Oof. Julio Jones. He needs wide receiver help quickly. But maybe not this year. Maybe he can make it by with Keenan, Godwin, and Mike Williams. I don't think any of those guys are like the epitome of health. So being able to count on them week to week is tough. Just not a lot of depth. So he needs another. He got a lot from Jerick McKinnon, Mostert, and Wilson.
Yes.
Those guys. Those guys were great picks for him.
Okay. So do you think he can get a better player than Miles Sanders with his 26 picks right after the draft, which is when he's going to trade them?
Yeah, like Miles Sanders or like David Montgomery or something like that kind of tier player. I don't know. I guess Montgomery's in a lower tier than Sanders now. Maybe. I don't know.
If Swift wasn't there, I would like Montgomery.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's hard to say. That offense is better, so you'd think he'd have more opportunities to score. But yeah, it's hard to say. It's an interesting exercise though to think about this. What running back is the best?
Let's just do a keep trade cut and we'll look at running backs.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love seeing Bijan at the very top.
There you go.
Okay,
Bijan worth more than anything.
I don't think you're getting Travis Etienne for a 26 first and second.
Plus, yeah.
Especially not. So this exercise is just on July 30th. This is when the trade happens. So you're not getting Travis Etienne on the 30th for that. Tony Pollard.
Could you get a J.K. Dobbins for that?
If he wasn't on Missbach's team, like if he was on my team, yes.
If Missbach embraced the tank, he could definitely do that. But he might be able to do better than that. He might be able to get an earlier first.
Yeah, I would think so. Ooh, okay. Okay. Could he trade for a 23
Whoever was drafted at the 110, 111, 112, 113, 114.
Could he trade?
Could Eddie take the best running back available at 13
mhm.
and after the draft trade him to Waldrop for his 26 first?
I mean, in theory, yes, but would he do that? No, I don't think.
Which side?
I don't think
Okay.
Waldrop would do that because he wants a
Because he
proven
will
player.
purposefully not learn any college football players.
Yeah, number
Good
one.
point.
Number two, he just doesn't. He wants a proven player, I think.
All right, so Miles Sanders is the 20th ranked running back.
Name some names around him.
DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, Zach Charbonnet, Nick Chubb are all above him.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, Rashad White, David Montgomery, Pacheco are all below him, and Cook.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would trade either Swift or Pierce to him just because I'm trying to be competitive, but God, it would be pretty sweet to own all three of his firsts over the next 3 years. But those are that's the only ones that stood out to me as a possibility.
Well, so what if you traded those players for a 23 first for me?
Oh, now
we got his 26 first.
Which
goes to me.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. We're crafting a trade right now. So yeah, so I get the 23 first in this case. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I just traded Pierce for like the 111 basically. So I kind of like him better than what I'm getting at like the 13th, 14th pick, I guess is.
Well, I don't have I have 10.
Oh, you have 10. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Maybe.
Well, if you want to throw stuff in for 6, I'm not wedded to.
Yeah, now that is interesting. That is an interesting spot. Okay, I think we need to wrap up.
I agree.
It's been real. So if you've been with us this long, probably a couple listens. Appreciate it. We'll pick back up with an episode soon with Eddie. Talk to him, get his thoughts on Dynasty, on life. What has he been cooking lately? All those good questions. And we'll see you guys next time.